History is full of legendary warrior men. We all know the names: Achilles, Leonidas, Genghis Khan. Kings and conquerors whose stories are shouted from our school books. We've been taught that men built empires, that men won the wars, and that men forged history with steel and strength alone. But what if that's a lie? What if history has a secret? A quieter, darker, more deliberate secret. It buried the stories of the women who also led armies, outsmarted emperors, and were feared on the battlefield. These aren't just footnotes in history, they are entire forgotten chapters. And it's time we read them aloud. Prepare to meet the most incredible female warriors that history tried, and failed, to erase. Fu Hao, the first general. Let's start over 3,000 years ago, in Bronze Age China, during the Shang Dynasty. This is an era of oracle bones, bronze weapons, and god kings. And it's here we find a name that should be as famous as any pharaoh: Fu Hao. Fu Hao wasn't just one of the many wives of King Wu Ding, she was his most trusted general and a high priestess. In a time when a royal woman's role was mostly ceremonial, Fu Hao shattered every expectation. Ancient oracle bone inscriptions, the earliest form of Chinese writing, show King Wu Ding constantly asking the gods to protect Fu Hao, especially when she was on campaign. And he had good reason to worry. She commanded armies of up to 13,000 soldiers, a massive force for the time, and she personally led them into battle. This wasn't some queen directing from the back, she was a frontline commander. Her greatest victory was against the Tu Fang, a rival tribe that had threatened the Shang for generations. After countless male generals had failed, Fu Hao crushed them in a single, decisive battle, securing her kingdom's borders. She was so respected that she was given her own land to govern as a feudal lord. When Fu Hao died around 1200 BC, she wasn't buried in the main royal cemetery. Instead, the king built a grand tomb for her right next to his palace, so he could continue to make sacrifices to her spirit. This is the very reason we know her story. Because her tomb was separate, it was never looted. When archaeologists opened it in 1976, they found it perfectly intact. Inside, they didn't just find silks and jewelry. They found over 130 bronze weapons, including massive battle axes that symbolized high military command. They found the remains of 16 people and 6 dogs, sacrificed to protect her in the afterlife. In fact, her tomb contained more weapons than any other from that era. The message was crystal clear: Fu Hao wasn't just a queen. She was the most powerful military leader of her age, a woman so revered that her king prayed for her help in battle, even after she was gone. Hutulun, the wrestling princess. Now, let's jump forward 1500 years to the sweeping plains of the Mongol Empire. This is the world of Genghis Khan, but this story isn't about him. It's about his great-great-granddaughter, Hutulun. Born around 1260, Hutulun was the daughter of Kedu, a powerful Mongol ruler. In a culture that valued strength above all else, Hutulun was a phenom. Trained alongside her 14 brothers, she mastered horsemanship and archery. But her real talent? It was wrestling. In the brutal, no-holds-barred Mongolian style, she was undefeated. Her reputation became legendary, recorded by travelers like Marco Polo. According to their accounts, Hutulun made a public promise: she would marry any man who could beat her in a wrestling match. The catch: if he lost, he owed her 100 horses. Princes and warriors from all over Asia came to try their luck. They all left defeated, and Hutulun's herds kept growing. Marco Polo wrote that she eventually collected a staggering 10,000 horses from her failed suitors. One handsome and wealthy prince was so sure of himself he wagered 1,000 horses. Hutulun's parents begged her to throw the match so she could finally marry well. She refused. In front of the entire court, she manhandled him, threw him to the floor, and walked away 1,000 horses richer. But Hutulun was more than an athlete. She was a fearsome warrior who fought beside her father. Marco Polo described watching her ride straight into enemy lines, snatch a man as deftly as a hawk pounces on a bird, and carry him off to her father. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a terrifying symbol of Mongol might. Her father trusted her so much that he wanted to name her the next Khan, but her brothers blocked the move. They just couldn't accept a woman as their supreme ruler. After her father's death, Hutulun's story fades, and she died under mysterious circumstances. But her legend lives on, the undefeated princess who chose horses over husbands and strength over submission. Mai Nzinga, the diplomat queen. Let's travel to 17th century Africa, to the kingdoms of Ndongo and Matamba in what is now Angola. This region was being torn apart by the Portuguese slave trade. And it's here that one of history's most brilliant leaders waged a 40-year war against colonial invaders, Queen Nzinga. Nzinga's story kicks off not on a battlefield, but at a negotiation. In 1622, she was sent to negotiate a peace treaty with the Portuguese governor. In a deliberate act of disrespect, the governor sat on a chair and offered Nzinga only a floor mat. He wanted to literally look down on her. Nzinga wasn't having it. She signaled to one of her attendants, who got on all fours to become a human throne, allowing Nzinga to meet the governor at eye level. That single move showed the world who she was, a queen who would not be subjugated. When her brother died in 1624, Nzinga seized the throne of Ndongo. But the Portuguese betrayed their treaty and ramped up their slave raids, forcing her into a long, grueling war. Outnumbered and outgunned, Nzinga proved to be a master strategist. When the Portuguese drove her out of Ndongo, she retreated and conquered the neighboring kingdom of Matamba, creating a new power base. From there, she fought a relentless guerrilla war for over 30 years. She was a genius innovator, giving sanctuary to escaped slaves and Portuguese-trained African soldiers, filling her army with experienced fighters. She even formed an alliance with the Dutch, expertly playing the European powers against each other. Nzinga often led her armies into battle herself, well into her 60s. She challenged not only the Portuguese but also the traditions in her own society that questioned a woman's right to rule. She often dressed in men's clothes and insisted on being called king, proving that gender was no barrier to power. By the time she died at age 80, she hadn't driven the Portuguese out completely. But she had secured Matamba's independence and built a kingdom so strong that the Portuguese had to treat it as an equal. Today, she is a national hero in Angola, a symbol of resistance and a queen who never stopped fighting for her people's freedom. Mai Bhago, the Saint Warrior. For our last story, we head to 18th century Punjab, India, during the reign of the Mughal Empire. This is where one woman's faith and fury turned the tide of a war. Her name is Mai Bhago. Mai Bhago was a devout Sikh woman trained from birth in the Sikh martial art of Shastra Vidya. In 1705, the city of Anandpur, home of the 10th Sikh Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, was under a brutal siege by the Mughal army. Facing starvation, 40 Sikh soldiers deserted, signing a letter disowning their guru and returning home. When Mai Bhago heard that men from her village were among these deserters, she was furious. She rode out to confront them, not with sympathy, but with pure, righteous anger. She shamed them for their cowardice, asking if they were going to hide at home while their leader faced certain death. Then, in an incredible act of leadership, she put on armor herself and challenged them to ride with her back into battle. Inspired and ashamed, the 40 men agreed to follow her. Mai Bhago led them to a place called Kadrana, where they ambushed the 10,000-strong Mughal army near the only water source in the area. In what became known as the Battle of Muktsar, Mai Bhago and her 40 followers fought with such ferocity that they completely stalled the massive Mughal army. They held them off long enough for the Guru's main forces to arrive and force the enemy to retreat. All 40 of the men she led died on that battlefield. When Guru Gobind Singh arrived, he found only Mai Bhago, severely wounded but alive. Moved by their sacrifice, the Guru tore up their letter of desertion and blessed the fallen soldiers as the Charlie Mukt, the 40 liberated ones. Mai Bhago was the sole survivor. After recovering, she became Guru Gobind Singh's personal bodyguard, staying by his side in full warrior attire for the rest of his life. She lived out her days as a revered warrior saint, a powerful testament to how one woman's courage can change the course of history. Fu Hao, Hutulun, Nzinga, and Mai Bhago. 4 women from 4 different corners of the world, separated by thousands of years. Their stories aren't myths, they're history. A history that has been silenced for way too long. They prove that leadership isn't defined by gender and that strength isn't just a male trait. These women commanded armies, defied empires, and built nations in ages that tried to reduce them to wives and mothers. The history books weren't written with missing pages by accident. They were written by people who wanted to control the story. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. These women are just a few of the countless heroes whose legacies we are finally uncovering. Their stories demand to be told and remembered. Because history isn't just about the victors who wrote it, it's about the heroes they chose to forget. Which of these warriors inspires you the most? Are there other forgotten female fighters you think we should know about? Let us know in the comments. And if you agree these stories need to be heard, subscribe and ring that bell for more hidden histories.